Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashik Kumar. More than 6 years after Brexit, the debate over whether leaving the European Union has helped or hurt Britain is far from over. New studies suggest the UK economy remains significantly smaller than it otherwise might have been, while the Polish community continues to adapt to life outside the EU. Joining us is Bartosz Kielak. He's a correspondent for The Times. Bartosz, welcome to TVP World. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Hello.
So the referendum was held 10 years ago, hence the 10-year anniversary coming up. But actually leaving Brexit happened in 2020, so 6 years ago. The general consensus is that because of Brexit, GDP in the UK has gone down by, on average, 8%. But a lot has happened in that period as well, such as COVID, such as, 5 different prime ministers since 10 years ago. How do we know that this decline in GDP is because of Brexit and not because of these other factors?
Well, the limits on trade with Europe are significant, and there's no denying that. The political instability would, at this point, seems inherent to the British political system, which seems to outscale what we used to anticipate from countries like, Spain and Italy, countries that we always describe in the British press as cases of political systems that are unstable. Definitely did contribute, since 2016. We're on to 7th Prime Minister if Andy Burnham gets elected swiftly, going all the way from David Cameron years through Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, and now on to Andy, who's literally arrived from Manchester and seems all very likely to take power. The economic shocks have been aplenty. Years of austerity under the Conservative government didn't help. There hasn't been much of pay growth in the country, and that's something that British people tend to point to. I've observed that the global economic shocks that Poland, for example, has always been somewhat resilient, did not necessarily affect the UK in such a minuscule way. Brexit, the COVID, as you've pointed to as well, and lastly, it's always worth pointing to that the ongoing war with Iran that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have started puts all global economies under strain. So, very difficult entry for the incoming British Prime Minister.
Well, it certainly is. Are there any guarantees that going back into the EU is actually going to, reverse British GDP decline, for all the reasons you've just mentioned?
The Polish economy, ever since 2005, has grown steadily, and significant portion of that growth can be attributed to it being part of the EU. On the other hand, we've seen the decline in the British economy, or not decline, just much slower growth on average. Returning to the EU, I wouldn't necessarily say that's on the cards for now. And the primary reason is that the person that we would consider most likely to take the prime ministerial role as early as 2-3 weeks time from now, is not the proponent of UK going back into Europe. During this leadership campaign, which never really transpires to be, Wes Streeting, the former health secretary, has put it out there that if he was to be elected prime minister, he would be proposing that the UK enters the EU once again. A couple of days ago, Michel Barnier, the former chief negotiator on behalf of the EU, in an interview with a British newspaper, said that the UK could be exempt to all the rules, be given back its special status, so it wouldn't necessarily have to enter Schengen again. It wouldn't have to commit to adopting euro. Still, what I'm saying is that why am I saying that the UK wouldn't necessarily be going back into the EU is because during this recent parliamentary campaign, the by-election campaign in Makerfield, Andy Burnham, so the person most likely to take the prime ministerial position, He was campaigning in a local area that's very reform-leaning, that voted for Brexit, and put in the situation by West Streeting, he had to decide what is more important: the future consolidation and support of the Labour Party, or chances of winning that local seat. So he committed not to be, reopening the accession process, entering back to EU. And he's going to be kept to that promise.
Right. Well, he certainly toned down his rhetoric about returning to the European Union. However, it wasn't so long ago that he was committed to doing it, of course. And the other thing, of course, is that he was elected by the people of Manchester. He wasn't elected by the country. So if he does become Prime Minister, he would be an unelected Prime Minister, would he not?
That's dangerously close to the territory of what opposition politicians like Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party, are saying, calling for a prompt general election right now. Keir Starmer was elected 2 years. Labour Party was elected to form a government 2 years ago with a very strong mandate. And as long as the Prime Minister has the confidence of members of Parliament, I think under the British constitutional system, it's all fine and dandy. In a way, I would say that the most significant concern that Andy Burnham has right now is that there's only one Andy Burnham, and repeating that success in 2 years' time at the general election will be very difficult for him. He has this Northern appeal, he has this working class appeal. He so far seems to command the support of his party. We'll see that whether there's going to be a leadership election or is he just going to be crowned the leader of the party. The thing that he does not have is loyalty of the party. Keir Starmer has sacrificed 6 years of his life. He spent so much time away from his family, building up the party from the Corbynies, cleansing it of the left-wing influence, be it right or not, making it much more of a centrist party. And then somebody who's just been elected to a single seat up north comes and takes his job. He does feel betrayed. He said that in his resignation speech. Starmer did have a lot of loyalists, and that loyalty that he inspired in people through years and years of hard work is not something that Andy Burnham's going to have. So the question is whether in a couple of months' time we will not see the party turning on Andy Burnham, who will seemingly be not able to deliver on what the people expect.
Right, well, we shall see, as you say. Now, Bartosz, when it comes to the Polish diaspora in the United Kingdom, how has Brexit affected them? And do they want to go back into the European Union?
I think the Polish people in the UK are very little of no significance. There has been historically very few parties who, in election campaigns, try to appeal directly to Polish people, and that only normally happens in local election campaigns. Polish people also bear a sense of betrayal. Boris Johnson being the mayor of London, he quite often campaigned towards Polish people. He always called Polish people his best friends. He always made a significant fact of the existence of such a big European community in London. And then he obviously, as soon as he entered national politics, came back to Parliament. He embraced Brexit as his policy and tried and campaigned on reducing the number of immigrants in this country. Obviously, that hasn't necessarily transpired because the UK now has a bigger influx, at least up until the end of the Conservative government, had a much bigger influx of non-European immigrants coming into the country, less so Europeans. There's a reduced European population in the UK. It's still a very significant one. We still have, 800,000 Polish citizens in the UK. It's a different immigration, it's a different diaspora than what it used to be. It's not first generation after the war. It's those people are very old now, and some of them sadly have passed away. It's not the 90s generation of people, some of whom arrived here illegally. It's not the post-2005 generation of educators, workforce coming here and then creating this new image of a European or Polish immigrant in the UK. Those are people who have settled and there's no significant trend of those people going back to Poland. Obviously, the Polish government right now would like to encourage those people to go back. But more so than ever, those people are slowly becoming citizens. They are becoming part of the wider British society, and they do behave and vote like members of the British society. They support various parties. Some of them are even, Reform and NATO First supporters who don't want people from different cultures living in the UK.
Bartosz Kielak, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.